All right, welcome back. Trying a new technology. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties with part 8 before, but we'll pick up with that. I hope that this fits in more or less with the sequence we had before. I deleted all the stuff from the spreadsheet, and then we'll rebuild it and keep track of what we're doing. But I want to start by referring back to the system variables and the things that that we're going to program into that. So the spreadsheet itself had columns, like we described before, for the susceptible population, the infected population, and within the infected population, those that are severe and either receive or fail to receive ICU treatment, the number of people who have recovered, and the number of people who perish. And that setup matches both the system diagram that we had, where there's populations and rates of transfer between those populations, a set of transfer equations that are all discrete time step things. So every variable increases or changes over time as the sum of a previous day's value plus a change. For the number of susceptible individuals, it's the number of people yesterday minus the number that get the disease. For the number of infected people, it's the number of infected people yesterday plus the number that get it minus the number that recover minus the number that die. And so let's begin in the spreadsheet with actually implementing the simple set of all these change functions. Turns out that that's easier to do than it sounds, even if we don't know the number of people who get infected in any one day. We have to build in some initial conditions, so the susceptible population on day 0 is just going to be equal to the number of people who don't have the disease. If there's 500,000 people in the population, in the susceptible population overall, and 10 of them have it, the difference between those two is just the 10 fewer. And so the number of people who have yet to get the disease, in a sense, is that the infected population is just equal to the starting number of infected individuals. The severe cases one, the breakdown of this, comes from the CDC that about 20% of all coronavirus, or all COVID-19 cases are severe. And so the severe cases is just a fraction of this. It's 20% of that. So if we just set that equal to the total number of infected individuals times the fraction of those that are severe, we have L6 times B8. Remember that B8 and these other parameters are unchanging over the course of this. So as we're going to replicate this line down further, I want to make sure that the B and the 8 are absolute cell references, so those don't change. We also have an ICU capacity in this model. The parameter set that we started with was 5,000. Who knows? This might be 1,000. I don't know what it's going to be. You're going to model that. So, but let's say that we have it be 5,000. And so the number of cases that are in ICU are simply, well, it's the number of severe cases up to 5,000. The severe cases up to 5,000 we would model as a minimum value. So it's the minimum of the number of severe cases or 5,000. There is a minimum function in most spreadsheets. It's just min. And then you just click on the two possible values that you want to compare. So the number of severe cases is 1. The 5,000, the maximum number, is another. That is, of course, an absolute cell reference because it's a parameter. And so on this day, there's 2 severe cases. We could test that by putting in like 5,600 here. If it's 5,600, then 5,000 receive care, but we also need to know how many don't. And so this is always going to be equal to a minimum function. So this one is going to be equal to the minimum of 0 or 5,000 minus, the number of severe cases minus 5,000. So there are 5,600 severe cases, 500 of them get treatment. Oh, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? because it's not a minimum function, it's a max function. So it's the maximum of 0 or the excess above 5,000. So let's go back to equals. Remember, we can't have fractional individuals, so this should be an integer. So int is the trigger for that, of the 10 people that are affected times absolute cell reference parameter rate. Okay, so we know that the math of this part's going to work. If there are 10 infected individuals, 2 of them will be severe and they will both receive treatment. If the infected population goes up, then that'll split between those that have treatment and those that have some unmet treatment. The recovered population is going to start at 0. The dead population is also going to start at 0. So that's the initial line. In day 1, those are all going to change by either an increase or a decrease or some combination of those from the previous line. These cells here, K6, P6, R6, and S6, are the changes in those. So I indicated those with the number sign in the beginning. You can call them whatever you want. Change in the number of infected individuals, or new infected, or delta I, or whatever. Those labels should have meaning to you. I chose this to indicate that it's a change. We don't know what that is yet. But I do know that if I knew it, that the susceptible population on day 1 will be equal to the susceptible population on day 0 minus the number of people who get infected in that day. So that's an easy change to put in. I know the infected population is going to change by an increase in the number of infected people, so plus the number that get it, minus the number that recover, minus the number that die, minus the number that die because they lacked ICU treatment. Because all these are blanks, they're assumed 0, and these all look like 0. The recovered population is going to be equal to the previous day's recovered population plus the change. The deceased population is going to equal the previous day's deceased population plus the number of people who died under these conditions plus the number of people who died under those conditions. So all of the change functions are actually straightforward and done at that point. These, because they're calculated directly from this previous infected population, I can just copy down. Those actually all turn out to be the same, and that's weird. I'm going to pause this and figure out what's going on. Classic error. And here's how I figured out what went wrong. I looked at this, it was clearly wrong. If you look at this equation up here, it's M7 minus B12. What's B12? B12 is the ICU mortality, not the ICU capacity. So what did I forget to do? I forgot that the B, everything with a B in front of it's a parameter, and that needed to be an absolute cell reference. You're going to make this mistake. Everybody makes this mistake. It's the most common thing that can happen. You set that so that it always refers back to B12. All of a sudden, perfectly better. So that makes me feel confident that all these changes, everything with a B in front of it, because that's the column I chose for my parameters, has a $sign, so it's not going to change. And these are replicable from one day to the next. We can play with this a little bit. Let's say that 34 people get infected. Does everything work out? So 34 people infected, that goes down, that goes up, this goes up, those go up. We don't run out of people. What if 5,400 people get infected? All that seems to work. The number of severe cases is still less than 5,000. What if 24,000 people get infected on the first day? Only 4,800 or so are severe. How about 120,000? All of a sudden, there's 19,000 people of unmet ICU need. So just by putting in trial values for this first change, all this other stuff seems to work out. If 6 people recover, and there's 6 people in the recovered population. And I'm pretty confident that the way that I built all of the change functions actually works. I'm going to stop this now, and then we'll come back and we'll do the deltas.